the keynote presentation, Adam Wagler, who is an advertising and public relations faculty member at the College of Journalism and Mass Communications. And what I love about this is that he's coming at the same problems that we are, but from a different perspective. So from a different personal history and from a different perspective, which makes our experience a lot richer, I think. He works here at UNL, and he teaches courses in digital and interactive media. He is an Apple Distinguished Educator, and if you catch him later or come to his session, you can probably talk to him a little bit about what does it mean to be an Apple Distinguished Educator. And he's currently working on a number of grants, developing mobile products and leading students on cutting-edge projects. And with that, please help me.
Thank you, Dr. Trainen. Thank you for all coming. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about, my experience. But what I thought I'd do, just to kind of get started, is talk a little bit about my background, so you have a little sense of where I'm actually coming from, because the other slides won't make any sense if I don't give you a little bit of background. If you want to follow along, if you're the kind of person that likes laptops and presentations in front of you, there's a little URL on the bottom left here, bit.ly/Adam Wagler. It's the presentation. You can download it later if you want. I'll keep it up there. The other thing that I'll kind of advocate for throughout the whole presentation, and definitely towards the end, is using Twitter. It's a good opportunity today to just try this out. We have a room full of people that are here to learn about technology and to experiment. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about, is just getting into that mindset of trying new things and experimenting and then seeing how they can work with your teaching. But there's a hashtag, and if you have no idea what a hashtag is, then maybe that's the goal for today. Figure out what a hashtag is, okay? And if you can't figure it out, come find me. I know there's other people in the room that have experience with this, but try it out. Feel free to tweet as much as you can, and just, it's a safe place to try it out, I guess. So the hashtag UNLTechEdge, and the little URL for the presentation's up there. So the title is Experimenting with Technology and Changing Media Environment. I work in the advertising department here on campus at the College of Journalism. So my background is just that. I teach the digital and interactive courses in the College of Journalism and Advertising. My background prior to coming to UNL, I actually have an art degree from Iowa State, so please don't hold that against me, but we're in a different conference now, so we're right. Art and technology, or art and design is my background. I have a fine art degree from Iowa State, and then I worked in Arizona doing graphics and websites and that sort of thing. So I've been doing that for over a decade now, and that sounds like I'm getting old, but hopefully I have more decades, I guess. But so coming to UNL, that was my experience. I had professional experience, and then now all of a sudden I'm kind of thrust into starting to teach and try to explain how I do this to people that don't know how to do it. So that was a challenge for me getting started. So I do teach in the creative side of advertising, mostly interactive and digital courses, but I do print design. And the whole idea is to come up with creative ideas to kind of put in front of audiences, to kind of get them interested in a topic or sell something, or get them, to take some kind of action. I also work on some grants here at UNL. I'll show some examples after we kind of get into this to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that are happening on campus, but they're also tools that you can use in your own teaching, so that they're built for teachers to kind of use and experiment with. I also lead students on a lot of different projects here on campus, and I'll show some examples of that. I'll just say I'm a self-proclaimed tech nerd. If you know me, I like to tinker. And then Dr. Trainen mentioned I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator. I'd highly recommend to everybody in this room to apply for it. It's a biannual application process, but it's a good networking experience that's affiliated with Apple. But you get to meet a lot of other instructors from around the nation, and it's a good networking experience. So there's a kind of link to that, and I'm happy to talk more if you'd like. So to start off with, this is how I kind of view the world, and It's really my content area and then what I do on a daily basis. But advertising and communications is kind of, where I am framing most of my views on education, but also the whole teaching philosophies and things that I bring to the table. And the part that I'm really interested in, and I'm going to try to make a connection here that is in my head that I try to articulate, but the Venn diagram, the little parts in the middle that overlap, I think is really interesting to think about how you can use advertising theory and techniques as part of an educational tool to kind of get students motivated into the content and excited about it. So I'll kind of start off by talking a little bit about advertising and then education and then show some examples. So my worldview comes from a creative background, especially in advertising. So most people will say something to this effect: creative people who ignite consumer interest with the right phrase or image. And that's like a real blanket generalized statement about who is in advertising and what they kind of do on the creative side. Now I'll start off, what do you guys usually think of when you hear the word advertising? Commercials, right? Is it usually a positive? No, we're the devil, right? So right. Commercials, right? It's a very interruptive model, what most people think of advertising. You see it, it stops what you're doing, you watch TV, it interrupts your program. You're reading a magazine, you get interrupted. You're on the interstate, you see a billboard, it interrupts the environment, kind of thing, right? So there's been a big shift because people do have that negative opinion. So there's a huge shift to, one, use technology to reach audiences, but also on top of that, there's an idea of push versus pull marketing. And pull marketing is just that. It's that opt-in. We're offering something of benefit that you will be interested in, or we hope you'll be interested in, and you'll actually join us and want to hear our message. So you're actually giving the consumer more of a preference and a choice. So that's kind of, so when I say advertising, I'm not really referring to a printed magazine advertising. I'm talking about the whole kind of process or the idea of coming up with a right phrase or image to kind of entice people into things. Just a little media history, just so we're all kind of on the same part. Technology and digital is not going away, and if advertising is any kind of indicator, it's a big number that's being spent on digital advertising, $119 billion in 2011. I just read an article that Nike is kind of dropping pretty much all the kind of traditional media and really putting all their money into digital media. And that's neither here nor there as far as the business end goes, but it gives you a sense of where things are headed. If media is all headed that way, advertising follows where the audiences are. They're not going to stick around on TV if no one's watching TV, right? So if it's any kind of indicator, this is where people are headed. But the challenge that I'm interested in and the connection that I like to think about is the long history that media has had with print, radio, and television. It's been around forever, right? And there's a little timeline here. It starts with Gutenberg's press and then goes all the way up. And advertising and journalism is based in that traditional media. So they're in the same boat we all are in. How do we use technology for our benefit, right? The benefits are a little different, or the goals are a little different, but it's the same kind of thing. There's a great book, if you're at all interested in marketing or advertising, there's a great book called The Long Tail by Chris Anderson. He's a Wired author. But it's this whole idea of media fragmentation. I'm not going to get into all that. But the basic idea is with digital, there's endless amounts of ways people can access content and actually consume things, right? And the way I view the news in the morning is different from the way you view news is different from the next person, right? I always talk about my sister. She lives in small town Iowa, and she listens to the New York City morning show. I have no idea why, but she can, and she does. So every morning she, instead of listening to the local morning show, she listens online to the New York City morning show. I'll have to ask her why. But the idea is that digital creates this long tail, okay? So the long tail meaning popularity is towards the left here, and there's lots of them, so lots of people listening to that one radio station if you go that route. And then there's endless amounts of radio station. You can even create your own radio stations and stream it online. So it goes all the way out to the long tail is one person maybe listening to your radio station, but it's an actual offering, it's a possibility. And that doesn't seem so innovative or so crazy at this point, especially if you're younger. That just seems pretty obvious. But if you think back 20 years ago, that's not even an option. That's not a possibility. If you go back even further, and this is why the book's kind of interesting, it talks about the 1950s and how, you know, if you lived in a town, you consumed the news from that town or that area. You had 3 TV stations, maybe, and that was what you watched. You had radio stations that everybody heard the same thing, so it was very much, you know, that's what people get, okay? Now it's whatever I feel like, I get online and somebody's offering it. If I want to listen to jazz that's made in southern Iowa, I can probably find somebody that's promoting that, okay? Or a blog or something, right? So it's an interesting concept to think about. And again, it's not, that in itself not so innovative, but if you think about it in context, as this is relatively new, is where we're going to get. So as we're thinking in advertising or communications, as we're thinking about the strategies of using new media, because it is so new, we'll look at a little history here, but it is so new, and I think a good way to frame this and a good way to kind of lead into the educational part here is it's an interactive contest that's in advertising called the One Show. And the basic gist of it is they're talking about how digital interactive advertising consists of a changing, making it hard to categorize. So these are things that I think we deal with on a daily basis. We get new technology and how can we kind of fit it into what we're doing. And then it's interesting to do this because we're trying to categorize something in digital media, and it forces advertisers to think inside of boxes. When you all of a sudden have to think of the category that you need to develop for, now you're kind of stuck with that medium instead of actually thinking about how it might best reach the audience. Okay, so what they kind of advocate here is instead of kind of thinking about it as a checklist, I need Facebook, I need Twitter, I need YouTube because that's what we need to do and that's the trendy thing to do. They do research and figure out what's the best way to reach our actual audience. So thinking about how to best communicate with audiences. So the focus shouldn't be on which channels to use or how many to fill. It should be on the people and the way we can interact with them is a good way to frame this. I did a research study, and I'm still kind of working on it. I won't go through all the methods or anything. If you'd like to talk about it, we can talk offline about it. But the basic gist of it, I ask creative art directors in advertising agencies in the region, how are they approaching interactive media? And that's really kind of the basic question. Because I figure if I know how they're kind of approaching it, one, it's going to help my teaching, but two, I think it'll help kind of inform broader audiences such as yourself. But the findings, generally speaking, where I'm at right now is one, they don't like advertising, right? People that work in advertising don't like advertising. I thought that was interesting. It's not that they don't like advertising, it's the connotation that comes with it. It's the baggage that comes with it. No one really likes it. And in digital worlds, they actually create tools to get rid of it, right? Everybody has a browser now that probably has a pop-up ad blocker built into it, okay? So we go to extreme efforts just to get rid of advertising, okay? So, and this is not something that advertisers don't know. So, but they don't like the term advertising. They're thinking about engagement, so how do we engage audiences? And the second part that I think is most telling and where we really need to think is everything is digital. I talked to one creative director from a local agency that's a youth marketing agency, and 80% of their business is digital because what they want to do is get on the first screens of younger audiences, and first screens meaning mobile. So mobile phones, how can we get on that first screen? That's where younger audiences are spending most of the time. I see it all the time in my classes, texting and on Facebook and all that. So how can we get on those first screens? Everything's digital, so they're moving that way. Embracing change, they are fully aware that Apple's going to come out with a new iPhone in 1 year, and then the next year, okay? And then they'll come out with a new iPad every year as well. So things are going to change, operating systems, technology, software, it's all going to change as we get going. And what they're trying to do is make digital part of their core DNA. And that's kind of what I'm going to advocate for as far as creatively thinking about how you can use digital media and kind of getting it into your own DNA and some ways we can get to that. So kind of go back to that. So that's kind of the left side of this little diagram here. The right side is, I'm still in this advertising mode, but if we tweak that little definition that I put up, if we say creative people who ignite student interest with the right phrase or image, now all of a sudden it can apply to what we're actually trying to accomplish. How do we get students interested in what we're doing and the content that we're trying to teach and get them engaged with it? So we can use similar words that communication professionals are using in a context for education. Angie down front, I'm totally taking this because she presented to me, not just to me, to my class the other day, but there's a good diagram to think about how we can approach this and how we can use technology in the grand scheme of things. It's called TPAC, and you can read about it. But the gist of it is there's three kind of main areas. There's a technical knowledge, a content knowledge, and a teaching knowledge, right? So that pedagogy part. Most of us probably have the content and the pedagogy down, or we're learning it and we feel pretty confident. And the technology will come, or maybe we are comfortable with the technology, but there's a range of ideas there, and I think that's where there's lots of room to actually look a little bit more. But I'm going to focus on this main area as far as how can we be better at integrating digital or integrating interactive media into our teaching and technology in general. But I think this frames it pretty well. A little history, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but just for sake of understanding that this is relatively young. And I always show this to my students because most of them, started school, right around in here. So they just assume all this has been around. And it has to them. I think that's what's interesting to think about. A lot of them, it has always been there, and we'll keep talking about that. But, the internet as we know it really started in the late 80s, right? So Tim Berners-Lee started the World Wide Web. You start to get search engines and browsers, and Yahoo categorizes things. Then Google makes it super fast and actually finds things you want. You get iPods. Then you start to get MySpace and Flickr. You get the Web 2.0 things, YouTube. I always think it's interesting to point out to students that Twitter and Facebook, 2006 is really when it started to open up with people. So it's relatively young, and now, when you go back to the little slide with the timeline for media history, every single advertising agency, or all the agencies that are really kind of on it now, are doing a lot more digital, and it's been around for, 20-ish years, okay? So, and a lot of the things that we hear now in media is social media, mobile media, and all this stuff is about 5 years old, like how we actually conceptualize it. So that presents challenges for everybody in the entire world, but how can we use these? So Twitter, Facebook, iPhone, like I said, 2007, they come out with one every single year. So App Store, Foursquare, and iPad, and it just kind of goes on and on. So, but it helps you kind of get a sense of, this hasn't been around a long time, but it's a challenge for everybody, even the professionals that are trying to use it in advertising campaigns. So I'm going to throw just some stats out to maybe frame the argument that mobile is actually going the direction everyone says it is. You're required by law to see the Morgan Stanley report if you talk about mobile in your presentations, so here it is. You can read the whole report, and there's other charts that you see, but this one you see everywhere in every single presentation. But the gist of it is the yellow line is the internet usage from mobile devices. So obviously it's been going up and up and up because there's been lots of more phones. And the green line is desktop internet usage, right? So the prediction and what's being kind of forecasted is that there's going to be more people using the internet with their mobile devices than they are with their desktop in around 2014-15, okay? So it's around the corner. So we're all positioning ourselves fairly well by just being here and starting to think about this. But if you think about how students come to, at least in my world, they come to college usually with a laptop. That's going to start to be more and more with phones, and it already is happening. And I'll show you some stats of kind of an informal thing I did. But how can we develop content, or how can we develop teaching materials that work on mobile phones? And a lot of times nowadays, you hear about people developing websites for ad campaigns. Nowadays, people, when they start to develop websites, they're actually starting with the mobile side of things and then developing the site itself. So they're thinking of mobile first. So something to think about. So I did this informal survey, and if you're a methods teacher in here, this would just probably break your heart, but this is very informal, but I do this just to get a sense of, my students and their background and where they come from. So this is just one course over the last couple semesters, starting in July in the summer, and then last semester and this semester. It's a new media design course, so we do web design, so I like to think that they're maybe a little more tech savvy, but that's not always the case. But their smartphone usage, just, I was real general, real basic, but I had 50 students total here. And half of them, or 16, have iPod or iPhones, and then a lot of them have Droids, some have BlackBerry. But if you think about, the mobile usage and the internet usage, and there's another chart that I'm not showing from Morgan Stanley, but there's smartphone saturation is starting to happen now. But we see it already in college courses. The next part, just social media usage, it's like a no-brainer now. I mean, I barely even have to ask it in my classes. Are you on Facebook? And they all kind of roll their eyes like, oh God, it's so old, is that really a question, right? So it's just a given now. I mean, you can see it. 49 out of 50 said they have Facebook. They're on Facebook, okay? So this is where they go multiple times a day. This is how they're consuming, content and media. And this is how they probably get their news and those sorts of things. Twitter, LinkedIn, I think MySpace is always kind of interesting to throw out there and see if anybody's still on it. Right? YouTube and Flickr and so on. And you can look at this a little closer, but the idea is they're on social media. They are on it. It's an expectation. And if they're on it, can we incorporate that? And a lot of us at the college I work in use Facebook groups to kind of push out content and start discussions that can kind of integrate into class. Okay, so college, this is the idea that if every college student generally has a laptop, and we know mobile's on the increase, we can kind of maybe see that eventually, but a lot of Mac, a lot of PC. Okay, so they're on those particular networks. That's kind of their media consumption, which is aligned with a lot of things that are happening, at least in the industry I teach in. So I thought I'd show a few examples of some projects that I work on, and some of them that you can use, and some of them are just like ways of maybe thinking about how to integrate tech into your life and what you actually do. Okay? So I'm going to show this video, and I'm just going to assume the sound works, and if it doesn't, I'll just talk over it.
The Omaha Science Media Project is a collaboration among Omaha Public Schools, media organizations, researchers, teachers, and students that utilizes media and storytelling to enhance teacher and students' understanding of scientific research.
The idea is that the teachers will use them in lessons that they're actually using. So as part of the curriculum for Omaha Public Schools, when we get to the piece where we learn about viruses in the biology classrooms, here are some student and teacher generated materials about some of the complex understandings of viruses.
It's for a good purpose, and we're just trying to reach out to the younger people to teach them how different viruses are becoming in your body and how you can probably defeat them if you can.
Working with the students, working with the scientists, working with the NET people has been a great benefit for me, because I have learned a lot that's going to help me in my classroom.
I learned a lot. I learned how to work it, use those cameras that we got, and it was kind of confusing at first, but then it just got really easy.
This could be something that, as a laboratory, we might want to use. We might want to get our own video camera so that we can get graduate students to kind of get more involved with maybe, interviewing their peers and having things on tape, I think that might be something that would be, add a sort of novelty to the science.
About viruses in general, I have learned that they're actually considered obligate intracellular parasites, which most people would not know what that means.
We get the opportunity to work with so much things and many people, I mean, they're not like telling us what to do. We get to be in charge of what we do and direct everybody else to how things go. I came in with the expectation of it not being that fun, but it turned out a blast.
We had partnerships and collaboration. We had students helping us to guide and understand best practices from the classroom. We had teachers working and building projects that they can actually use with their students. And then at the end, then incorporating technology into that.
As we move forward, we're looking at the actual model, the teaching science through media model, and how that affects student understanding and teacher understanding for that matter.
The basic idea was it was a collaboration where students kind of directed teachers and scientists and media professionals of how we could tell a story about science, and specifically viruses. So we broke into all these little cohorts. Yeah, and we had a good time too. It was 2 weeks. So, and these were the students that were involved. It was through OPS, so these were OPS students that were in 8th grade, and this was during the summer, so it was the transition between 8th grade and 9th grade. And the idea was, how could we use storytelling and journalistic tools, specifically video, to tell a story about particular viruses where it's both educational and informational, but also somewhat entertaining. So each group kind of did some different approaches. The group I led, we did kind of a more humorous, kind of fun approach, but there were also some very serious ones. And if you go to the website, you can check out the projects. There were 8 videos that were developed: HIV, Coxsackie virus, influenza, and so on. There were 8 different viruses that may or may not kind of work with what you teach here. But it was an interesting project to work on. The sidebar to this is, I had students shoot and develop the video. I had students that I led to develop the website. So if you click on the website, that's all student made, not high school student, but college students. So it was like the whole process was a very a good learning process for everybody involved, both teachers, scientists. You saw Peter Angeletti over on East Campus. He's a virologist here, thinking about incorporating video into promoting what they do in their labs. So it's in a little example, and the other thing that was produced from that project was all student made as well, that I led them on, are these printed books, and it's essentially kind of the website in a printed form. But if you'd like some, I brought some. It's essentially our whole process, and then some of the teachers that were involved from OPS is kind of what they got out of it and how they're actually incorporating some of those ideas into theirs. So if you want some, you can grab them. I have them, and if I run out, I can get more. But on the website, you can also get the electronic copy version of that if you'd like. So this is kind of, we were in lab settings. We were working with professionals, media, and scientific. Another example is maybe just in class, and I think it's just, so Pinterest, it's like a collage, and that's how I'll leave it for now, and you can ask more. But last semester, it was kind of when it started, or you start to hear a lot more about it. So I teach a print and design course, and it's creative ideas. Specifically, the assignment we were doing was for print campaigns. So the students have to develop a 3-ad campaign. And since it's the design class, a lot of times students want to just jump right into Photoshop, jump right into Illustrator, and start making their ad. And we try to come up with ways of developing an idea, like what's actually on target, on strategy, how can we integrate that into the actual design. Well, and it was kind of on a whim, and I'd maybe kind of like to advocate for a little risk-taking, especially when you're thinking about technology. I'd heard of Pinterest. I actually called it Pininterest, so they all looked at me, the ones that were on it, like, that's not how you say it. So it's like, okay, well, we'll all learn something, okay? So, so taking a little bit of risk, one, just to say it, but two, actually trying to incorporate it. So part of the assignment, they have to produce what's called a mood board. And it really is just a collage of design styles, color palettes, fonts, images, just tones and looks and feels. So what they can do is, what they do is make a collage, 3 different ones, on kind of 3 different looks and feels for their print campaign. So kind of on a whim, I'd seen it, it looked kind of interesting, I'd signed up for it, I'd gotten that far, and then I just asked students if they've ever heard of it, and a few of them raised their hand, and then I said, well, let's try to use it for our mood boards, and they got all excited about it, and so we all kind of tried to figure it out. Most of the class wasn't on it, but the ones that were the big advocators, and I'll show you kind of thing. So we got everybody signed up. They work in pairs or threes. And I didn't know for sure, but I assumed it did because it seemed to make sense. We figured out that we could collaborate on a board, so you can actually share a board and multiple people can contribute to it. And now it seems kind of obvious, but at the time it seemed interesting to try it out. So what they did was each group came up with 3 mood boards. We talked about it. So we learned about, a new technology. We got everybody kind of, involved in something interesting and new. And for the discipline that I teach in, it's a requirement now. You just need to be experimenting with technology of how you might be able to incorporate it into a campaign or into a PR effort. So this is just an example of another class that I did this in where we're kind of developing an app for some photography, and I'll show you the sneak peek of it. We're developing it this semester, but just like kind of a look and feel, some typographical elements and that sort of thing. And there's a student example of a power user. So if you're just easing into this, you can see what a power user looks like. Mallory's always excited to talk about her Pinterest account. And then I kind of wrote about it on my blog, just a little bit of how I got to that and how I tried it in the process. It actually worked out really well. We all learned about new technology, but it actually accomplished the learning objective of making a mood board and developing kind of a design sense and a style for their campaign before they started actually designing it. Another project that I'm working on, or actually we're just kind of wrapping it up. It's done this summer. It's called The World of Viruses, and essentially the short of it is the part that I was most involved with was making iPad apps. We made a series of 5 iPad applications that are essentially interactive comic books. They're interactive comic books in a sense that, and it's I got the iPad 1, so I can't plug it in, but I'll kind of show it, and these are free, so you can download them if you have an iPad, but they kind of resemble this, and there's an audio track to it as well, so this is not the best reproduction of it, but you swipe through it like a comic book. It's got an audio track that's produced by a group in Maryland called Soundprint. We're working with the Rake School to do the programming. I'm helping do some of the design and front end. We have science content advisors to make sure everything's accurate. There's a whole idea of the seriousness of viruses being translated into a comic book form, so there's a big discussion about that. And then what we've done is we've kind of embedded activities into this. So the storyline talks about, this is HIV, so the storyline talks about how HIV is transmitted, how it infects the cell, and on and on and on. And then the little interactive bits follow the storyline and kind of extend one particular area. So this case, they're aliens that came to Earth and exploring the environment after the devastation of HIV, and what's the atmosphere like. So there's different data sets and types in here to kind of learn more about it. And the whole project was really to experiment, like how far can you go with these little interactive bits and still get people back into the comic. But if you'd like to check those out there, if you go to worldofviruses.unl.edu, you can find apps. You can find more about the whole entire project. There's some print materials, and there's also a teacher's kind of reference for science activities that are kind of vetted by teachers. Sometimes when you get online, you just find like a cool activity, but you get into it and it's just not accurate or not right. So we've had kind of a curated set of activities for viruses and science on there, as well as the applications that are available for free on the iTunes store. So we have HIV, influenza, foot and mouth disease, ocean virus, and one other one I can't remember right now. Okay, but there's 5 of them. You can kind of check it out. But we've made iPad apps that are comic books. And then the last one that I'll kind of talk about is something that's happening this semester. I'm working with a group of students to develop an application that works well on the mobile web for tablets specifically. that's going to be used to promote the photojournalism program that we have at the College of Journalism. So I have a group of advertising students that are developing the front-end web design, look and feel, some of the strategy to promote the actual website. And then we're also working with the Rake School, which is kind of a mashup of management and programming and computer science here on campus, where they're doing the back-end development. So we have these trips that go around the world to document poverty throughout the globe, and we're essentially building a platform for those to be shared. So that's about all we have at this moment. So I can give you a URL if you're interested in kind of learning more as we develop it, but right now we're kind of wireframing and designing the front end. So to kind of finish all this up, right, the one thing that we should be sure of is there's always going to be change and new things to develop, okay? You can watch these on your own, we're not going to watch them here, but there's all kinds of really cool ways that I think of interacting with content that are very, you know, futuristic and back to the future kind of thing that seemed, you know, not possible 10, 20 years ago. But now in the upper left, there's an eye tracking laptop, so you can just kind of sit there and, you know, track things and control the computer with your eyes. And this not only, you know, helps everybody, but, you know, people with disabilities, that's huge for accessibility. Same with Siri, that's kind of been played, but if you want to see the duet, I think it's interesting how people use technology. But the duet that you may have not seen, there's also a Notorious B.I.G. Version of Hypnotize that's pretty funny too. So, but that I didn't feel that was appropriate to put on here. So it was good though. So and then Microsoft has their Kinect. Okay, and there's these really cool things they're doing with finger tracking, right? So you combine these voice commands and eye tracking and finger tracking, you're getting to the Minority Report, you know, like how you're going to kind of control that. And it's not to say that it's, you know, going to affect us right now, but if we know that that's the way people are going to be interacting with content, how can we even to begin to plan for it? And I don't have an answer for that. I'm not going to predict this is exactly how it's going to be, but it's just getting into the mindset of like tracking what tech is doing and being at conferences like this and seeing what other people are doing and how they're approaching it will help. I think kind of the ultimate, you know, everything combined, Google has these glasses that are going to have augmented reality in them, right? So you always see the school movies that's set in a school with a person that has glasses or eyelids painted on them. Now they just can wear glasses and it has a computer in it, so they don't even have to like try to fake texting or being on their computer, right? If you're a student, we can see that, I guess, so if you're there. But I think it's really interesting to think about not only how we could maybe incorporate it in the classroom, but now all of a sudden how we interact with the world around us, right? So there's this hidden layer of augmented reality built onto it, and you don't have to pull out your phone to do it. You just have your kind of wearable computers, and kind of interesting. So there's a million of these videos out online of babies using iPads. This is real similar, but I think it brings up a point of kind of where we are right now. Right, so that, I mean, we've all seen that, you know, the babies using iPads and that sort of thing. But the idea is, like, if there's an expectation of being able to touch and manipulate and share and do all those things, this is where we're going to need to be thinking, okay? I always start off with my web design course asking my students, what do you think of a company that does not have a website? And I'll open that up to what you think. What does it say? I thought I heard somebody say it. Yeah, it's not good. It may not even exist, right? So you're not even on the map if you don't have a website. So, and that's just their expectations. So if expectations become, how we interact with content and that having a control and being able to have a preference of how we consume it, that's the world we're living in now, and it's going to continue. So some things that we learned, thinking about all this is the connections in my mind with communication and advertising and education, I think really helps me frame how I can approach teaching. Thinking creatively and strategically about how we integrate tech. It's not just the little check boxes, I need to use X, Y, and Z, but experimenting enough to have an opinion that this would actually work and this won't, okay? Usage is going to increase. We looked at that. How can digital media be incorporated into education? And we looked at some new tech as far as the expectations and interactions. I always advocate for using Twitter. It's the one thing that you can do right now that can continue on your kind of professional development. It's a great tool. People that are on Twitter love posting articles and cool stuff that they find, and they're sharing it. You can follow anybody and everybody. And sometimes you just need a reason to go there or somebody to follow. So if you sign up for Twitter, you get a blank screen, and what do I do? Follow these three. These are pretty good people to follow. They're from around the country. One of them's in the room, so you can talk with her in person. But Dan Meyer is from California. He does these really cool things with math. I think he teaches around 6th grade, but he shoots these videos and makes math questions based on real life situations. So shooting a basketball in the arc, and is it going to go in kind of thing. Jennifer is in Florida, and she's a tech person for a Florida school system that posts a ton of links to great resources and good activities and just ways of thinking about things. And Angie is here in Nebraska, but some of you may know her, but I would recommend following her as well. She's got some great articles. I was kind of creeping on her Twitter feed a week ago when I met her. So, it's just giving you a reason to try it out, and it's a great platform to do this, not only for professional development, but I use it in class using hashtags, and I can integrate things that students think are interesting into my classes and have it kind of be more of a conversation and have them thinking outside of class as well. So things that I'd recommend or kind of moving forward are leveraging technology to your advantage. You can use it in class, but also to develop yourself as a better teacher and just experimenting with things, so don't having to check all the boxes. What are some things that you can try, and are there ways to use multiple technologies to kind of accomplish the same goal and give students an option? For the mood board things that I do, I give them the option. If they don't want to use Pinterest, they can still do a collage. That's fine. It's really about getting to the learning objectives, but I try to have them try things as well. I don't know if it's even a term used, but I'm going to say it anyway. But being a creative learning director, right? So taking those advertising concepts that they use as creative directors and thinking about technology and using them for learning objectives. Advertising calls theirs objectives marketing and communication objectives. We call them learning objectives, but they're really getting at the same thing. How can we get people involved with what we're trying to promote? Okay. Prepare, adapt, and be flexible. I think that's just a fact of life now, especially when you start talking about technology. We're all here today to learn something, so I'd advocate that you try something new today. And if you do anything, make it Twitter if you're not on it. I think it's just a good, easy place to start. And connect and share, right? So just don't get on and you can lurk for a little while, but then start sharing and you'll get the benefits out of it. You'll get feedback on your ideas. You'll get comments of, wow, that's really cool. Can I use it? It's great for networking. And like I said, the one thing that we do know and how this can all kind of wrap up for us is we know things are going to change. There's no way you'll ever get to me to try to predict the future. There's some things and there's some indicators that look pretty cool, but I still haven't got a flying car like Back to the Future. So until we get there, I'll believe it when I see it. So thank you for the time. If you have questions, I'm happy to stick around, and I'll be around all day today too. So thanks.